Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz. Anybody who knows anything about my story knows that I spent a considerable amount of time in prison, and also knows that a considerable amount of my turnaround came as a result of reading the books of Ayn Rand and her philosophy of objectivism. Today's guest is here to talk to us about the relevance of objectivism in our current culture and our current society. And he's well equipped to do so. He is a longtime objectivist philosopher. He is a member of the board of directors at the Ayn Rand Institute, and he is a lecturer at Ayn Rand University. Dr. Harry Binswanger, welcome to the Rational Egoist.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I've heard good things about you and your show.
Thank you very, very much. So just to get started, can you give us the elevator pitch? What is objectivism?
Well, objectivism, as Ayn Rand described it, is a philosophy for living on Earth. It has one big, essential, central message, which is your life belongs to you, and the good is to live it. She dramatizes her philosophy in her novels, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and two other earlier novels, and I can't recommend them highly enough. If you're only going to read one book in the rest of your life, it should be Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead. Only if you read that, it won't be the one book you read. You'll want to read the others.
I agree. So Miss Rand held that reason, and I believe correctly so, reason is our only means of knowledge and our fundamental means of survival. How far have the cultural attitudes or the dominant cultural attitude swayed from that? In other words, how much of that is actually happening today in politics, television, movies, everywhere?
Well, it's not a continent away. It's not a planet away. It's a galaxy away from what we are doing now. The concept of reason has all but disappeared due to the influence of bad philosophers beginning 200 years ago, when the founding fathers were writing the Declaration of Independence. Emanuel Kant, a German philosopher, was writing the Critique of Pure Reason, which was an attack on reason put forward under the veneer of respect for reason, but we just want to make some modifications in reason. You have to understand it differently. I'm all for reason and science, but not about reality. It's about phenomenal reality, the internal states of your mind as you confront an unknowable reality. So he separated reason and reality, and that has taken about 200 years to, well, now 250, to really saturate our culture, because he had tricky, almost arguments, pseudo arguments for his position, and no one was able to answer him. So he converted the intellectuals. And if you wonder why does Harvard and Yale and every goddamn other university in the country turn out socialists, it's because the higher up you go on the intellectual totem pole, the more Kantian they become, the more anti-American, the more anti-reason, the more anti-self they become. And the original American idea in the Declaration and in the spirit of the people was your life belongs to you and the good is to live it. And you live it by using your mind, your reason. We were the country, the can-do country of creators, innovators. To some extent, we still are. But the more high up you go on the intellectual pyramid, as I say, the less respect for reason and self you'll find.
Now, Kant's conception of reason, I read it, the Critique of Pure Reason, actually twice as a result of, I think it was objectivist epistemology. It introduced me to Kant. So I had to read it because I couldn't take, Ayn Rand's word for it or Leonard Peikoff's word for it. I had to see for myself. Now, my book that I co-authored is called Down the Rabbit Hole, but I got to tell you, reading the Critique of Pure Reason, that's going down the rabbit hole, because he says that there's two worlds, right? There's the phenomenal world and the noumenal world, but we can't know the noumenal world because of the categories in our mind so distort reality as to present us with an inaccurate picture that he called the phenomenal world, and that's what we're reasoning about. The problem is he was claiming knowledge of the noumenal world. He was claiming to know how the human mind actually operates. It's self-contradictory and self-negating from the outset, and just put together in a lot of complicated language and a lot of long German sentences.
He had one trick that Ayn Rand identified that lay at the base of everything he did. He determined that consciousness can't be valid if it has a nature. He said consciousness has to be pure, has to be transparently aware of existence. But since our senses provide us with information in a certain form, and our mind works with certain concepts, we can't get to real reality. And it's like the senses and the concepts, in Ayn Rand's view and my view, are our means of contacting reality. That's why we evolved senses and a mind, is to be able to know the outside world and deal with it. So it's like he's saying, it would be nice if you could get to Chicago, but to get to Chicago, you have to go by a road or a plane route. You have to get to Chicago by some means. So you never get to Chicago as it really is. Only Chicago is reached by I-75, or Chicago is reached by American Airlines. That's not the real Chicago. It's crazy.
That's why Ayn Rand says we're blind because we have eyes and deaf because we have
in
ears.
his view.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, not in her
it's
view.
It's our eyes that make us blind.
Right.
If we didn't have eyes, but we could see without means, and therefore in no particular form, then we could know reality. It's like if you apply, the senses are like instruments. So it's like saying, well, too bad we have to measure temperature with the thermometer. So we can't know what temperature is. We only know what temperature is measured by the thermometer or the thermocouple or some other means. So we can't ever know what it really is, only as it is registered by this instrument. But we use this instrument to register what it really is. So it's an attack on any form of consciousness as such. Ayn Rand said, even if there were a God, Kant would say he can't know reality because he has to know about some divine means and no others. So a means of achieving knowledge means you can't achieve knowledge.
It's so silly. It's unbelievable to me that
but
it actually took hold.
You read it, the transcendental deduction of the categories and apodictic certainty is only for analytic statements. And that makes it sound clearer than it is. It's all, he initiated and mastered the technique of muddying the waters to make them appear deep.
Yes.
As Nietzsche said.
Good point. Okay, so you said that objectivism is a philosophy for living on Earth. Now, what that means to me is it provides us with a moral code by which to navigate life. Yes. And to me, it's an absolutely inspiring moral code. And it's based on the idea that man's life or human life is the standard of moral value. Can you explain what that means, that human life is the standard of moral value?
Yeah, and I wouldn't put it that way. Okay. Because that makes it sound like the life of mankind is your goal.
I thought you might say that. Yeah.
Your life is your ultimate value.
Yes.
Everything that has value to you because you want to live and do certain things with your life. If you were terminally depressed and didn't get the motivation up to get out of bed, you couldn't pursue any good or any bad. The good would be to get out of that state and start living. So she says that your life is your ultimate value, but you need a guide, you need a principle, you need a gauge, a standard to judge, well, what serves my life and what hurts it. And the standard is, well, what does your nature as a biological being require? So, for instance, eat food, don't eat dirt. I mean, that would be, too simple to be a moral principle. But the principle behind the standard of value is that your essential nature is to survive by the use of reason, by the use of your thinking, by the use of your mind, figuring things out. That's how you live your life. So the good is that which is proper to the survival of a thinking, rational being. But that's the nature of man, each individual man. Your nature, because of the kind of being you are, is to need to act on the basis of reason. So that's the sense in which man's life qua man is the standard of value, just as if you were to go to the doctor for your physical health, you would want him to know human anatomy, not because he's going to cure humanity out, at large, but he needs to know your anatomy, which is a human being anatomy, not a dog's anatomy or a plant's physiology. So in the same way, you need to know, how does a creature like me, an individual creature, everyone, each individual creature like me, survive? What's our ecological advantage? And it's the brain, it's thinking.
Yes. So Rand held, right, that we are conceptual beings. We acquire and store our knowledge in concepts. And therefore, if we wanted to learn to live long term, rather than just, this looks good, so I want it, that sounds good, so I'm going to go get it, we had to conceptualize the principles of survival so that we could live long term.
Yeah.
So what are some of these principles that she identified that were the rational way to secure our long-term self-interest?
Well, she has a system of ethics which has one fundamental virtue, thinking, rationality, which is the full acceptance of reality as an absolute and the fullest use of your mind to perceive that reality. But that is a very, very broad abstraction. From that, we break it down, or she breaks it down, into 6 subsidiary virtues. Honesty, which means not faking reality, because you're committed to reality, so you don't lie to yourself or others about what reality is. Independence, because you are a thinking being and you control your own mind only. You don't control my mind, and I can't control your mind. You have to be independent in your thought and action. And integrity, which means once you decide something with your mind, you act on it, you do it. You don't say one thing and do another. You have integrity. And justice, which is that you need to judge other people for what they are and give them what they objectively deserve in terms of the morality that you accept. So, for instance, if I say it's good for me to think and I see someone else thinking, I say, good for you, because that's consistency. If I said, oh, you shouldn't be thinking, that's irrational. That's a contradiction. Or if I realize that man survives by producing things, which is going to be the virtue of productiveness, the next virtue, I can't take what somebody else has produced, because either people feed off each other and there is no wealth produced, or everyone respects each other's property and then everyone flourishes, which we see is a story of the 21st century versus some of the earlier centuries. I'm thinking of India and China until recently, which went from the biggest getting off, I hope I'm not getting into the weeds here, but you need some kind of examples. India was the basket case of the world when it was a socialist country, officially socialist country. I know people came from India and they told me, we admired Soviet Russia. I wanted to go to Soviet Russia to study to become a doctor, and I could have gone to the United States, but I thought, well, Russia is the paradise. It's the moral ideal. The United States is selfish, greedy, capitalist. They were so poor Well, maybe you've seen Slumdog Millionaire. It opens
I have
with,
not.
oh God, it's a terrific movie. It opens with a boy, a young man living on a dung heap. And he roots through the human excrement to find something that might have value. I mean, unbelievable poverty. And by the end of that movie, after they move to a market economy and a good dose of capitalism and selfishness, they have high-rise, they have skyscrapers, they have television shows and so forth. And you notice the left never mentions this. The left, which makes all this noise about, oh, let's help the most vulnerable among us. Why are we so wealthy when others are so poor? We've got to apologize for our standard of living when other countries are poor. The biggest story in centuries is India and China getting incredibly more wealthy. I mean, they're not wealthy, but moving up to a humane standard from abject poverty in a few decades because they abandoned socialism. And I think you can understand why the left wouldn't want to spend a lot of time on that point. Justice and justice fosters productiveness. Productiveness is the next virtue. So again, honesty, independence, integrity, justice, productiveness, that your life is your own, but life is a process of value achievement. Even for the animals, it's not exactly achievement, but they have to get stuff and eat it. And they have to do a lot of things constantly, avoid predators and so forth to stay alive. Man can actually alter his environment, produce wealth, make everybody better off. And that is a cardinal virtue for objectivism. Producing wealth is a cardinal virtue of objectivism, and you should be proud of it. And that's the last virtue, pride. Pride, not humility, but if you do something good, take pleasure in it. Make the formation of your own character a priority for you. She calls pride moral ambitiousness. I want to be the best Harry Binswanger I can be. And that commitment to self-betterment is behind all moral action. Speaking of productiveness, you wanted to know about the, you don't mind if I kind of continue on my own, Michael, do you?
What do you mean?
That you're not saying anything because I have some ideas in my mind.
No. I want you to finish with the virtues because I have some questions about them.
Rationality is fundamental. Then I'll get to the application later. Rationality, independence, honesty, justice, productiveness, and pride. They're all forms of using your mind to the fullest.
Okay, so the first question I have relates to justice, because to me, this is very important. Since I've gotten, I've never been on Facebook or any of these platforms before. And since I've been on them, some people have, like somebody once made a comment to me. I mentioned that I disagreed with Ayn Rand about her definition of value. I said I just disagree with her definition, not her theory, not the concept, but the definition I think could have been better. And somebody said to me, why would you say that and risk being censured? And I said, first of all, I'm not going to not say what I think out of fear of being censured. But
what does censured mean?
I really, I guess. But the term justice to me, it means giving people that which they deserve. And Rand specifically talks about when dealing with people of mixed character, that you have to deal with their virtuous parts and not deal with their unvirtuous parts or their immoral parts. And she said it's a very difficult task. So I take that to mean just what she says, that it's very rare that I'm going to come across somebody that is an Ayn Rand hero, that is absolutely virtuous in all senses. And if I tried to deal with only that, I'd end up a very lonely person and probably starve to death. So I deal with different people and I try to deal with their virtuous parts. But some people say, no, that you can't, if you are dealing with somebody that's unethical in any, form, frame, or fashion, that you don't deal with them. So is my interpretation right that you would deal with them, but you would deal and direct your dealings to their virtuous parts?
It depends whether they cross the line, and it depends upon what you mean by deal with. So, for instance, when I go into CVS and pay I don't have to know the moral status of the cashier. I only have to know that she's not going to pull out a gun and shoot me, or some other initiation of force, which is the basic social evil, is the initiation of physical force. So I assume she's a decent human being, and I deal with her in what Aristotle called a functional relationship. I give her my credit card and she rings it up, and we're both happy with each other. If I'm going to go bowling with someone, something I haven't done in a long time, then I want to know a little more.
Sure.
Are they hostile or surly or grasping, or are they going to lie about what happened on the bowling? Or are they decent people? They don't have to be objectivist heroes to have a friendly relationship with, but to be a real friend or the pinnacle, a romantic partner, then you have to know they're really good. But how many people in your life I'm I would say blessed, but I'm an atheist. I'm fortunate to have 3 or 4 really good friends. I think most people only have 1 or 2 really close friends. And that's because of objectivism, because we met, all my close friends, we met and pursued the path within the objectivist movement. So it depends upon the relationship. The closer you're going to be, the more you want to know about, is this a good person? And the jackpot is romantic love. And my wife, I married because she is a terrifically moral person and has other charms, and very, very intelligent, smarter than I am. So that was a big turn on too. So it's contextualized. I don't like that word. It's a matter of purpose. What's your purpose in dealing? Dealing is so broad. From marrying to giving the credit card to ring up the sale is a tremendous thing. But no, I think you're on the right track there. But I'm dying to know what you think Ayn Rand's definition of value is.
Ayn Rand's definition of value is that which you act to gain and or keep.
Wrong.
Well, that's the definition. I can go get my copy, or it's seek.
That's a preliminary definition.
Okay.
That's a neutral definition.
Okay.
That's, as she said, that's just to get the conversation going, in effect.
Okay.
To delimit what I'm talking about, but that's not the definition. She never gives a actual objectivist definition of value. I could construct it, but it would
that's
have
what
to
I've
have
done.
A relationship to life. Okay, what do you got?
Well, what I would say, and it's straight out of an unabridged dictionary, is a value is any object or quality desirable as a means or end in itself. And the specific adjective there is desirable, meaning you should desire it. And to me, that is as a definition. Now, concepts aren't the same as definition, obviously, so it's far broader. But that to me captures the differentia, because when you say a value is that which you act, or that's what you seek to gain and or keep. Well, I can seek to gain and or keep a lot of things that I wouldn't say have objective value. So that's why I differ with her on that definition.
Okay,
because
I would criticize. I see what you're saying. I would criticize your definition. I think it violates one of the rules of definition. But I see what you're saying. You're saying that her characterization of that which one actually can keep is too broad. It includes, like Peter Keating in The Fountainhead, trying to become the world's greatest world's most loved architect.
Yes, because value can be used as what I value and what I should value.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's why it isn't a definition. Well, that's why it's a preliminary statement to indicate what you're talking about, so that then she can trace back the concept of action towards a goal, which is what she's talking about, to the alternative of life versus death. So the full definition would have to make reference to pro-life, not in the abortion issue sense, but that which promotes the survival of a rational being.
I agree
that
with you.
It has to be normative. It has to be normative. That's what you're objecting to. So she gives a neutral definition to get delimited the subject matter. It's not a definition, it's a characterization. But there's a whole doctrine of neutral versus brand name definitions, and that's not the objectivist definition. That's like, well, everybody would agree with this. That's what I'm talking about. So neutral, pre-analytic, pre-objectivist answer.
Okay.
A characterization.
Well, then my criticism would then be that she never provided a full definition. And I still think that's look, the woman was an absolute genius. So once in maybe a millennial philosopher. Her philosophy has changed my life. But I did see some, maybe they're linguistic flaws. I don't know, but that was one of them that sort of jumped out at me. And if is a definition that she provided, maybe, off the record or in casual conversation, I'm certainly open to hearing it. Okay.
Well, she didn't provide a definition of value, but she provided a definition of good, which is what you need the definition of value for, which is all that which is proper to the life of a rational being is the good.
I agree with that. And that's why, like I said, I agreed with her theory. I just disagreed with that specific thing. Another question I have to ask you is, you've said a few times that man's life belongs to himself. I agree. I got into a big debate on Facebook, and I used the term, I said, if human beings don't own themselves, then we can own nothing. Somebody said to me, no, human beings don't own themselves. It's not true. I could point to 4 separate places that where Ayn Rand heroes use or imply self-ownership. Also, in the 1960s, at the time, it was the Nathaniel Branden Institute. When Branden was lecturing under Rand's auspices, he referred to self-ownership. I had, in this discussion with claimed objectivists, I don't know what they are, what the proper term would be, they were twisting their minds in knots to evade the concept of self-ownership, because they had heard Leonard Peikoff say that self-ownership is not consistent with objectivism. I subsequently found out why he said that is because Murray Rothbard put self-ownership as a primary.
No, that's not why. No, it's true. Leonard Peikoff is right, and you're right too. It's call man. I quoted your life belongs to you and the good is to live it. That is a metaphorical or not quite precise statement. And if you try to do what Auberon Herbert did, which is to say the start is property rights in your life, you've stolen the concept of property rights. The concept of property and belonging comes from the concept of rights, which comes from egoism and man's life as an end in itself. So it's a kind of technical point, but technically, yes, you own the objects. You don't own your own life. How would you or yourself? Who is it that stands there owning you? It's a metaphor. It's a great metaphor.
Well,
and
I don't think it can be so.
time.
I don't think it could be so in a legal sense, but I do think it's valuable in the sense of I have the right to use and disposal of my own being. And I understand that it's a self-reflective kind of thing, but we use self-reflective language constantly: self-love, self-esteem, self-hatred.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's different. You're not trying to if you base the right to life on the right to property,
I agree with you 100%. I would say that self-ownership derives from the right to life, not the reverse. but
Well,
it doesn't negate the concept. But people were
okay.
like vitriolic, some of them, with me about this, and guys were
Okay.
saying, no, it was only because that was in fiction, she didn't mean it. And I'm saying, listen, this Ayn Rand was more precise with her use of language than any human being I've ever encountered or read. There's no way she used it 4 times or had someone use it in her name and
Right.
she didn't mean it.
Yeah, if you're saying the way I express an equivalent expression of you have a right to your life is that you own yourself or your life, okay. But if you're trying to derive
That's
the
completely
right,
different. I agree
if
with
you
you.
say, well, look, there's a right to property. Now, on that basis, I can
No.
show you that you can't be killed.
No, I agree
Because
with
if
you
you're killed,
100%.
you lose your property. That would be, you
Yes.
see, that would be circular. That would be
I agree with
okay.
you 100%. Okay,
And
so
then I think it's a technical
it
issue
is.
now
It's
we're
just I got
discussing.
it is. I just you only I think it's unnecessary. The only reason I brought it up is because, like I said, I was attacked. I don't like the word attack, but I was criticized harshly. I was insulted and everything else for making the point, which and I made it effortlessly. It just I didn't do it. I wasn't trying to make some broader point. I was unaware of the idea of deriving rights from self-ownership, which is silly. But speaking of rights, that's actually where I wanted to get to next. What are rights? I got 3 questions. So what are rights? Why do we have them? And what is the proper economic system to implement them?
Gosh, I don't know. Oh, wait, I do know.
You do know. I know you know.
Yeah. Rights are a claim, a moral entitlement to freedom, to be left alone, to act independently, to not be subject to someone else's will forcing you to do what he chooses, but it's an area, protected area. If you stay within this area, you are the one who gets to decide without others' interference what you're doing with your life. So in Ayn Rand's formal definition is a right is a moral principle, which already just cuts through the fog. It's not a entitlement by birth, or it's not a gift. It's not Congress deciding or God giving. It's a moral principle, like don't lie, which says, which defines and sanctions a man's freedom of action in a social context. And every word in there has a specific job to do. The one I want to focus on is freedom. Freedom is the absence of initiated physical force. It means whatever people may do in terms of their minds in regard to you, like, you louse, I hate you. Or, hey, come over here and try and buy this. You if you are not subject to someone laying hands on you, you are free. So your freedom is not taken away by disapproval, by someone's offensive speech. Oh, I'm offended. Okay, you're offended. That may be a social breach, but it's not a violation of rights. Rights say, don't put your hands on me or my property,
right?
As long as I respect the same right for you. So that's what a right is. And I like to put it this way: rights prescribe freedom by proscribing coercion.
Nice. I like that.
And why do we have them? We have them because your life is your own, because egoism is the standard that the good for you is to live your life. And you can't live your life. You're subject to someone else's will. You control your own mind. And if someone tries to control your actions or your body, he's depriving you of the control that is rightfully yours by the moral principle of rationality, that you have to live by your own mind as an independent being. So you have them because reason is man's means of survival, and reason is a faculty under your volitional control. And therefore, the only thing that can interrupt that is superior physical force. Can't make you think as he wants you to think, but he can make your body go through the motions that he wants your body to do, or he can take your property and retroactively enslave you so that you have labored for his benefit, not your own, even though you didn't intend to do that. So the reason we have them is man is a rational being, is the thing we went through before. And the third question was, what social system
Yes.
is based on rights? Laissez-faire capitalism, a system so far from what we're now living under that people cannot dream of it. People, I mean, even in my case, it took a long time for me to realize certain things. And now can I go to today's headlines? Because you want to know the relevance in today's Wall Street Journal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Nothing's more relevant than today's newspaper. Microsoft deal for Activision wins EU approval.
Yeah.
What
the
does
fact
that
that they
mean?
need the approval of government tells you everything you need to know.
Right. Microsoft can't buy or make some kind of deal with another company, even though they own their company and the other Activision owns its company. They can't trade freely by mutual consent without the permission of the state or the European Union, the superstate in this case. That is a violation of the rights of all the shareholders of Microsoft and Activision. They are the owners. It's their property. The government is in the same position as a private thief. A private thief takes your property and violates your rights. A government that taxes you or tells you how to use your property, what's permitted and what isn't, is acting as a thief. It's depriving you of your rights. So that's just one little example. No antitrust laws, no immigration laws. What? No immigration laws?
I'm so happy
No.
you said that.
No
so happy you
immigration
said it.
law. I got another one. No public health role. The government's proper role in public health is zero, less than zero. The government exists to have a police force to stop force initiated by criminals and an army to stop foreign invaders from violating your rights. Government exists to protect rights under capitalism. That's how Ayn Rand defines capitalism, a social system based upon individual rights, including property rights, in which all property is privately owned. So immigration law, public health law, drug laws, no drug laws. How about the Federal Reserve? No Federal Reserve. How about, and this was one that took me a while to realize, how about the gold standard? I think Ayn Rand herself wanted to legislate a gold standard.
I would say she's wrong.
Yeah. People can trade in whatever they want.
Yes.
Whatever weights and measures of whatever substance or whatever. There's no official money, meaning there's no money the government makes you take, and it doesn't define the dollar. In my view, there wouldn't even be a term dollar in a laissez-faire economy. There would be weights of gold and weights of silver, maybe weights of palladium or some other metals. There's no need for the concept of dollar. This was something that the great economist Jean-Baptiste Say, S-A-Y, a follower of Adam Smith, wrote about. And again, I was stunned. I thought, yeah, why do we have dollar and franc and Reichsmark and pound sterling? Why do we have those terms, those concepts? Just divert your attention from the fact that you're trading a commodity for a commodity or for a service. So it's so far, you look at the dollar bills in your pocket. They are printed by government. Government wouldn't do that. That's socialist money, socializing the monetary system. I have on my shelf 3 or 4 bank notes from the 19th century issued by private banks. Private banks issued their own money against their own holdings of gold and silver, and people accepted them or didn't accept them or accepted them at a discount.
So it's a society without force.
Really far from what we have
No,
now.
it really isn't, because what it is you're taking the objectivist principle that the initiation of force is evil, tying it to the fact that we have rights, and saying that a proper society, which would result or would be capitalism, is one where force is banned from human relationships. And that means the government can't properly initiate force either. And therefore, all of the things you talked about that are proper government jobs would be funded voluntarily by some means. And I think that's very relevant. And we're so far from that. There's, very few people out here advocating for such a thing. But we've only got a couple minutes, but I want you to, if you could stay for a couple minutes longer than what I told you. I told you 45 minutes because I want to get this immigration. I've been really pushing on immigration. Immigration laws are unconstitutional. I think the argument is clear cut on that. But I heard you make such a great moral argument for open borders. If you could just quickly lay it out as concisely as you can.
I'd love to, because it's not something I've cared about much until recent decades, when it's kind of conservatives have switched to become anti-immigration, which they didn't used to be. The basic idea is we have rights as human beings, not as citizens of this or that country. And I don't own the country. You don't own the country. Not even the government owns the country. Not even the population owns the country. I own the land that I own.
Yes.
And I can stop anybody I want to, for any reason, from walking on my land. And I can permit anybody I want to, for whatever reason, to walk on my land. So this idea of, well, it's our country, us being some sort of collective entity.
Yes,
so we get to say who comes into our country. You don't get to say who comes on my land. And I don't get to say who comes on your land. So the basic argument is foreigners have rights too. We're foreigners to them. So don't we have a right to go where we're voluntarily admitted by the owners of people in other countries? Imagine what real estate prices would be if you own real estate. If they open the doors to all immigrants from all over the world in whatever quantity they come, and the more they come, the better our standard of living, and the more the real estate would be worth. You'd make a fortune if you own any real estate. And you would be better off in terms of economics, because as long as each immigrant supports himself, as long as he produces more than he consumes, he raises everybody's standard of living. And now some people are saying, but they come here to go on welfare. No, they don't. No, they don't. The statistics tell a different story. And if you're worried about that, end welfare.
Yes, that's the thing to argue against, is the welfare.
Whether you're homegrown or foreign, you shouldn't get welfare. But at least you can't oppose letting people in who, let's say, post a bond. I've got, here's a bond for $50,000, and I want to come here for 5 years, and surely I can, but they won't do that. And, I know a lot of immigrants. There are a lot of immigrants who work for the Ayn Rand Institute. Most of them are naturalized citizens by now, but they came here, and they tell me that the only question they were repeatedly asked by the official, year after year, do you intend to work here? And if you said yes, they wanted you out. So it's not the case, this idea of, well, we're keeping them out because they want welfare. No, we're keeping them out because they want to work, which is a complete economic fallacy and is immoral. I couldn't have my job if other people were competing for it. Well, then too bad for you.
Yeah, you don't have a right to a job.
Your skills.
Absolutely. Huh? You don't have a right to a job.
You don't have a right to a job. No. You have a right to seek a job. You have a right to improve your skills and get a job. And today, it's so easy, if there isn't government interference, to find remunerative work because there's so much wealth in America, so much wealth. It's staggering. You can, make a good living. Two cleaning ladies just left here in my house, and they make a phenomenal amount of money cleaning house. And it hurts me how much we have to pay them, but they do a great job. And I don't want to do. There's another principle of economics called the law of comparative advantage, which says I'm better off saving the time cleaning my house, paying someone else to do it, because that frees up my time to do higher revenue things. The economics of capitalism is not understood. People think, oh, they're going to take, like there's only 5 million jobs, and if they come in, they're going to suck them all up. There won't be any jobs left. There are an unlimited number of jobs. There's an unlimited number of things you can do to make the world better, and people will pay you for it.
Yes, they will.
So,
Dr. Binswanger, it has been an absolute honor to have you here. You've managed just now, with the comparative advantage, you're referencing Ricardo, you got Adam Smith, John Baptiste Say, you got them all. It's been great to have you. I hope you'll come back again sometime. Is there some place that people can find you? Oh, yeah, there's HB Letter, Harry Binswanger, HB Letter, one, jammed together, HBLETTER.com is my website for my membership site for a fee, but there's a 2-week free trial. Also, I'm on something called HBTV, which is a YouTube podcast. My 100th episode is coming up. So they can find me all over. You look at my Wikipedia entry. I'm bragging about my Wikipedia entry. It's great. I looked at it. All right. Good. Thank you. For now, this is the Rational Egoist, Michael Liebowitz. I'm signing off. Remember, like, share, comment. Till next time, this is the Rational Egoist. Oh, and subscribe. I'm sorry. I've almost forgot. I'm all so excited about Harry being here. Thank you. Until next time. Thank you, Michael.